Hello and welcome to the podcast. I am really glad to be back recording episodes. It's been a while since I've last put one out. Just been really focused with work, and I'm really keen to get back at it and talking about a lot of the topics that people are messaging me about, asking questions and about. And today, what I'm going to be talking about is a topic that comes up a lot. I see it a lot in clinical work, but I also get asked this a lot in the DMs on social media. And it's this idea of how can you begin to learn to trust yourself. And the reason that this is such a big question and why it's worth talking about is when we think about some of the things that happen in relationships, um, where we can go through betrayals, we can go through traumas, we can go through these big revelations where things happen and we don't realize that we may have missed the signs, or something may have happened out of the blue, and it's completely blindsided you, and it's affected your sense of self, and your confidence and your trust in yourself is obviously diminished as a result of this. And now, this isn't true for everybody, but it is something that comes up a lot. People saying, like, how am I ever going to learn to relax and feel safe in a relationship, or how am I ever going to begin to trust my intuition or trust my gut, if I ever open up to somebody again. And I always think, like, just from my own personal experience as a human being, not just as a mental health professional or as a therapist or anything like that, I like to think about working on your relationship with yourself. And I don't mean this in a really cliched way. I mean genuinely starting to begin at the base and the foundation of showing up for yourself, establishing standards, establishing a routine and a level of discipline that you hold yourself to, where you begin to show up and make changes in your life. And what this means is you take 100% personal responsibility, and you take ownership of your choices or lack of choices, or the decisions that you make. And as much as that sounds, very obvious, or, I don't know how the fuck it sounds like, but to me, the reason this is such a powerful pivot is because you're challenging your old belief systems, you're challenging your conditioning, and you're actually working on the identity of how you've seen yourself for so long. And I think, like, when you start out in this space and you've got all this doubt and you don't know how you're going to begin to trust yourself, I like to think of goal setting, like just setting something for myself. Like, it could be getting up, going to the gym every morning, you know, fuck, it could be anything, like, but it's in the doing of trying to attain that goal and actually making them conscious changes that things begin to shift. And I used to see this a lot with personal training, clients that would be coming in and, training hard and getting up and doing their daily cardio. And then you start to incrementally see their confidence build as a result, because consistently what has been happening is they've been doing things that they didn't think were possible before. They've unlearned these limitations and beliefs that they had established around what was possible for them and how they seen themselves. And I see this time and time again. And I think, like, when we look at boundaries and we look at being assertive and we look at using our voice and asking for what we want or creating any kind of change in life, whether we like it or not, it starts with a decision, and it starts with you owning that decision and deciding this has to change. But I think, like, when we get so fixated on how is this going to happen, we have to break it down on these smaller steps and start with, what can I do right now? What can I start with? What's the smallest thing that I can begin to do now consistently and keep showing up that's going to build this trust in myself? So, like, even if you take, like, learning a new skill, it could be reading for 10 minutes every day. And as small as that might sound, if you do that every single day and you stick to that, and you hold your word to yourself, like, that has value, and it builds that sense of trust in yourself. And again, we look at this in the context of a relationship. If you decide, look, I know that this person is no longer good for me, I'm not going to make space for them in my life. I'm not going to tolerate their bullshit anymore. I'm not going to let them demean me or disrespect me or use me. And there can be fear around addressing that. But once you make that decision and once you do something differently, and it's massive, especially for people that have maybe placated or been people pleasers their whole life, they now suddenly get to that point of saying, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. To make that decision, like, that comes off all the work that's been done in the background, getting you to that point of, small incremental victories that happen week on week, where you've decided, look, I'm not going to do that anymore, or I'm going to prioritize myself, my self-care. I'm going to intuitively listen to what I need, And I'm going to allow myself to get out of my comfort zone. I'm going to stretch myself beyond the limits of what I thought was possible initially. And I think like maybe this is a bit of a ramble. I've went off on one, like, but where I see this, and I think the thing that holds a lot of people back, when they start to think about trusting themselves, they fall back into this whole old identity and this old belief system, of a younger part of the self that had less confidence. And I think they lose sight of the fact that there's a competent, fucking confident adult that's in front of them, that they are, that has resources and skills. And a lot of it is about letting go of those beliefs and conditioning around what you thought was possible for you. And actually deciding that if you put the work in and if you decide that you're going to change this behavioral pattern, that yes, it's probably going to be uncomfortable and you're going to have to lean into some really, really fucking intense conversations with some people. Maybe not in all contexts, but you're going to have to face some situations that you might have been afraid of. But what you'll realize in the doing of that is that you're a hell of a lot more resourceful, confident, and competent than you give yourself credit for. And you'll actually recognize in a lot of ways that as bad as it initially may have appeared, that you could tolerate it, that it was fine, that it wasn't as bad as what you thought it might have been. And even the times where it goes disastrously wrong and it fucks up and you're sitting there going, how the hell did I get that so wrong? It's grand because it's feedback. And then you come back to the drawing board, you learn from it, you explore what worked, what didn't work, and you don't let that deter you. You keep going, you move forward. And again, if we can just improve gradually in terms of how we show up in the world, what we tolerate with people, what we allow ourselves to communicate, even having difficult conversations, because that's one of the things I see a lot is people avoiding certain conversations, especially with couples. They don't lean into certain conversations that need to happen because they're afraid of each other's reactions, or depending on their attachment style, there's loads of other stuff going on. But what you don't communicate, you carry. And you're holding all that emotion, you're holding all those thoughts in your mind, and sometimes you have to bite the bullet and you have to learn the resources that come with being able to communicate a wee bit more effectively, just address the situation and recognize why it's important, why it needs to change. See where it goes with the other person, see how they respond. And that's the thing, because you haven't avoided it, you've showed up for yourself, you build your confidence on that. But if we think about confidence and self-trust in another way, we have to allow ourselves to fail. We have to allow ourselves to get things wrong. We have to give ourselves that grace and compassion. And that happens even when we're having uncomfortable conversations with people about how we're feeling or about boundaries or anything like that. Like, there is going to be times we're going to get it fucking dead wrong. We're going to say the wrong thing. Or, we might trigger the other person, or we might be insensitive or tactless, or we might get so caught up on what we need from our boundaries that we forget that the other person maybe doesn't really recognize why this is necessary or why this is happening, or we might do it in a way that's a bit cutthroat. And that all happens in the early stages where you're just developing the nuance of how to communicate with people. But as I say, you have to allow yourself to get things wrong. You have to allow yourself to fail. And I think, like, for the people that are coming out of relationships where maybe they've had betrayal or trauma and stuff like that, it is the sense of self, it is the identity. And I think, like, building that trust in the self comes through the doing. And it is about recognizing your strengths and your resources. And it is about building your confidence in yourself. And I think that actually comes from setting yourself goals and about showing up for yourself, taking time to heal, self-care, attending to all the parts of yourself that are still wounded. Um, and I think, like, when people set a very clear, tangible goal, it gives them a sense of forward focused direction. And it allows them to implement things that can then build their confidence moving forward, because you can't hit a target you can't see. And I use that example of personal training in the beginning because, again, it's a very visual metric, I suppose. You can look at the body, you can look at the physique, you can look at the strength, you can look at the fat loss or the weight loss or whatever the metric is. But there still is that consistency, there still is the doing that has to lead to the outcome. And it's in the doing, it is in the consistent action that outcome happens and that sense of achievement happens. And the shift that goes along with that when that person has put the work in. And as I say, like, it won't always go smoothly, especially when we think about the container relationships and, the people that we're dealing with. But you have to fucking go easy on yourself. You have to allow yourself to get things wrong. You have to allow yourself to fucking try new things and have an opinion. And I think, like, for so many people, when their confidence is low and their self-esteem is low, there's a multitude of stuff going on. They fixate on the other person, what the other person might think or feel. They get so hung up on what the other person might think of them that they self-censor and they edit themselves and they hold themselves back and they don't say what they really think and feel, or they don't allow themselves to ask for what they want and they won't rock the boat. And I think it's a bit of a shame because you're toning your personality down and you're hiding the true essence of who you are from the world. And that's, you know, whether you're skeptical or not, you believe you only live once. People deserve to see the real you. You deserve to show the real you to other people. And unfortunately, that comes with a level of confidence and trust in yourself where it's like, look, I actually really don't give a fuck what people are going to think of me based on how I really feel. Because if they're really close to me and they really do accept me for who I am, then it's safe enough for me to be able to express myself truly, authentically as I am. Caveat to that being, obviously, you would like these people to be safe. You're not going to go into a room full of strangers and start, maybe blaring out your most intimate secrets or how you feel or your political views or whatever the fuck it is you want to talk about. But within reason, like you don't tone yourself down, you don't hold yourself back, put yourself down, or try and blend under the wallpaper so that you just get by. Because those are all like survival strategies. And I say, like, when you think about with confidence and self-trust, sometimes that means going against the grain. Sometimes that means being the person in the group that's like, look, I'm cool to go out tonight, but I'm not going to drink, even though maybe everybody else is like peer pressure and you to drink, or whatever it might be going on in the clique or the group of friends. It's that you allow yourself to stay true to you. You allow yourself to communicate what you really think and feel. You don't worry about micromanaging other people's reactions and stuff. And look, when I say like not to fixate on what other people think, we are social creatures. We are like that. We are wired for connection. Like so, on a level, we're intrinsically going to think or factor in what other people think or feel. But I suppose what I'm trying to say is not to let that become like a cage that limits you, that stops you from expressing yourself, and that you don't give so much weight to what you perceive other people to think or feel about you to define you. And I think that's really, really important. Um, maybe I went in a bit of a ramble there, but look, I think that's part of what holds people back, from staying true to themselves, from really actually moving in that place of alignment. And I think like when you're trying to develop this sense of self trust, you have to also recognize who you're not. What parts of your identity are you holding on to that are constructs that you've created for other people to give you validation and acceptance, but that maybe do not fit you as a human being. And also maybe reflecting on your choices, like, how did I get to this career? How did I do these things? Was it doing it because it felt right for me, or was it maybe a familial expectation, or whatever it is? And it's maybe just exploring that and actually recognizing, well, where does this land for me now? How do I see myself? How do I feel about myself, and what needs to change in order for me to be more accepting or content with how I'm living life? With your peer group and stuff as well, it's also trying to have the right people around you that do hold that solid space for you to be you. Because when there is safety and acceptance there, you can let your guard down, you can be authentic, you can be vulnerable. And that in turn can teach you, how to open up and talk about what you really think and feel and rock the boat and be silly and show all those different parts of yourself. But then it's about having the confidence in yourself to carry that momentum forward into the world. So then when you do meet another partner, that you're not living from that place of wounding, that you're not living from that place of trauma where you're like, how did I not see that coming? Or, and I know this is a bit vague because I'm talking out of context, but like when I started this, I was saying about people that have maybe been betrayed in a relationship and, they're overwhelmed. They're like, I don't trust myself. I don't trust how I missed this. And I think why this has come up for me and why I wanted to talk about this is because it's a lot of it's rooted in control. A lot of it's rooted in fear. It's this idea that if I keep showing up a certain way and if I stay hyper vigilant and maybe if I overextend and people please and I use all these different strategies, then I can somehow insulate myself or buffer myself to this idea of this person ever being unfaithful or ever betraying me or ever do X, Y, and Z, mistreat me or abuse me or whatever it is. And I think the thing with that is it's exhausting, for one. And I also think it's coming from another place, maybe connected to like an earlier wounding where you've developed this level of hypervigilance where you're not safe. The safety wasn't there initially. And it's, as I say, it's rooted in control. And when you're in a relationship and you feel like you have to control all these different variables, you don't ever really feel grounded or safe. Because the thing is, even in your best day, even if you overextend and placate and show up and give so much of yourself, and you're, super vigilant for threats and all this other bullshit, people can and still will let you down, but not everybody and not all the time, because it's not true for everybody and it's not true all the time. It's just certain people will do things based on where they're at in themselves and whatever else is going on. But when you're so caught up in that cycle of trying to control things and then something bad happens, then you start to internalize that and you bring it onwards and you give yourself a hard time. Like, how did I miss this? And, what could I have done differently? Or, what was it about me? Or what did I miss? And like part of that's actually just letting that go and recognizing and looking at it. And it's like, look, even in your best day, even if you were on it and you were looking at everything, you still couldn't have stopped that from happening. And I think the reason that I'm just highlighting this as well is because you do then need to come back to yourself. You do need to learn to kind of soften under things and recognize like what is yours and what is theirs. That person made that decision. They've went off and done whatever they've done. Obviously, the impact that has really hurt you. It's impacted your sense of self, your self-worth, your confidence in yourself, your trust in yourself, your trust maybe in relationships or in men or women and partners. And that all has to be rebuilt. But at the core of that then, as I say, is your relationship with yourself. And that's the thing that takes time, you know. And you have to allow yourself to grieve what you need to grieve and feel what you need to feel. And then part of that then is also like if you were looking at this, in stages, like how do I then build myself back up? And it's like, well, we need ones, we need goals, we need things that can help give you that sense of achievement and sense of recognition and fulfillment within yourself, getting out of your comfort zone, building your confidence, doing things that you didn't think you could do, letting go of those old beliefs and that old story and that old narrative and that old identity and becoming more confident. We become confident in the doing and the attainment of the goal. It's not so much the goal, it's who we become in the process of trying to achieve the goal. And like anything in life too, I think part of the things that frustrate people is that it does take time. It does take time to create a bit of change, and building your confidence. But we develop confidence and competence in the doing. And that's why I'm saying also earlier, we need to fuck things up. We're going to get things wrong. You're going to date people that are complete fucking disasters. You're going to get things wrong yourself. You might operate from a place of fear. You might operate from a place of wounding. You might get things wrong. You might overreact, underreact. That can be connected to trauma. It might not be connected to trauma. There's just fucking mountains of stuff that can be connected to this. But at the core of this, as I say, is your relationship with yourself. And part of that is just learning to actually trust yourself. And that happens through showing up for yourself in your life, challenging your belief systems. And as I say, trying to stay in alignment with your values, trying to stay in alignment with who you are at your core and that essence of self. And part of that's also letting go, of older expectations of how you thought you should be or needed to be in order to feel worthy of love or worthy of acceptance or worthy of a relationship, whatever it is. And that takes a wee bit of time. And one of the things like I really love about this work that I get to do is I get to work on identity, I get to work on old belief systems, I get to work through trauma, I get to clear the impact that in the nervous system, I get to clear the memory of that so that it's no longer defining or impacting on behavior. But if anything, like for people that are listening to this, that are maybe coming out of shit relationships or they've maybe just been betrayed, whether you choose to stay with that person is a completely different scenario. That then is a conversation around how do we develop trust within the container of the relationship? How can I trust this person again? Slightly different conversation. But for the person that's maybe, been betrayed and they've come out of a relationship and they're trying to regain their sense of self, everything that we were talking there about building confidence, developing safety, learning how to use your voice, learning how to ask for what you want, expressing yourself, setting goals, taking time to heal, taking time to get things wrong, just giving yourself space. All that's really, really necessary in order to kind of work through all the bullshit that you've just been through. And I think like if you hold on to this belief that you're never ever going to be able to trust yourself again, or you create this fear and avoidance around relationships, you create this idea that you have to be constantly on guard and you have to be looking out for threats and stuff. And as I say, it's connected to trauma, it's connected to wounding, and that deserves to be worked through. But it doesn't have to define all your relationships. It really doesn't. I think when you can come to a place of like self-acceptance and you recognize that your worth's not defined on being with another person or what another person thinks or feels about you can learn to move forward in your life. You can learn to take back up at a personal responsibility and a bit of personal power. And you can see things a wee bit differently. You don't let that define you as a person, whether that person stepped out in that X, Y, and Z, or if they were just a complete fucking arsehole, whatever it is, you do not let that define your sense of self. You make that decision for yourself that I'm not going to let this define me. I'm not going to let this define how I see myself. I'm not going to let that stop me from showing up authentically as who I am at my core in the world. And also that I recognize that that person may have made a fucking categorical, catastrophic fucking error of judgment that has really hurt and impacted on me, but that I'm not going to let that define how I will see relationships or my level of worth connected to relationships. So I like, other than that, currently working on a program that I'm going to be launching very, very soon. And it's going to be focused on relationships, for people in relationships looking to deepen connection. I'm going to be working through basically everything that I would have liked to have been equipped with earlier in life. I want to be able to serve a lot of people, because I love my one-to-one work. I love it. I love how transformational it can be, but I want something here in place that can help people because I get a lot of messages about relationships. So dive into communication, conflict management, just a lot of different things that are going to enrich the relationship. Cover psychosexual stuff. I'll be covering a lot of different things. I'm fucking really, really eager to get this out because the first group of people are going to be a massive part of this process. I'm also going to have like a semi-live element where I'll be able to interact with all the people that are in it. And I'm really buzzing to get this out. But as I said at the very, very beginning of this podcast, I'm going to be so much more regular on these podcasts now. So any topics, anything at all, DM any suggestions, any questions, any messages, shoot away. I absolutely love talking about relationships, love talking about anything self-help related, mental health related, trauma related. I'm here for it. So thanks very much for listening. I hope you took something from this, and I look forward to catching you on the next podcast.